Second.
Motion by Mr. Guines, second by Mr. Lawrence to accept the agenda. All in favor?
What's that? 1, 2, 4 of us.
Yes. Yes, I was like, what? All in favor? Unanimous votes. Presentation agenda, mayor's report.
No report.
Council reports, Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Guines, Mr. Tisdale, Mr. Shoemaker. All right. Public comments, got a total time allotted of 45 minutes. Anyone on my left that would like to speak? No? Anyone on my right that would like to speak? No? Anyone in the back? No? Okay. Citizen comments is now closed. All right, policy agenda, what do we got?
It's your agenda, as far as the possibility of increases. My, analysis of the situation is, we're open to everything. We're trying to raise revenues in order to make sure that we're competitive in every phase of our employees and their compensation. Again, just from my point of view, we need to be sure of about $1.5 million to $1.8 million to do a 3% across the board. And given the latest and greatest with gaming and sales tax, we're right about maybe a 0.85% down. And at this point, if you were to ask me yay or nay about what we could do, we can't do much. I know we've got a challenge to keep people in very specific positions competitive and keeping them from going to other places. But again, our police and our fire is the main purpose of what we tried to consider at the last meeting with regard to some of the expenses related to the tourism support, and that could have presented that cushion that we needed in order to move forward with pay raises. In a nutshell, it's a challenge to address anything across the board, but we're open to looking at some of the positions, especially at the lower end of our, entry-level folks, that we want to keep them at least in a $15 per hour mode, and that's what I'm concentrating on now. The entry-level folks that are at $13.65 an hour, what we need to do it, and to increase that bottom to the 25% level to move them in a better situation with regard to compensation.
Well, if you move to $15, say the entry fee, how does it affect everything else?
It would affect everything else, but I think we need to have a four-tier approach to doing what we can do, given the dollars that we're anticipating. The growth. I don't want to keep this on for another 2 hours, but we're looking at just every possibility, of new revenue that would support this. This is year after year after year. We really need to look, a 5-year plan, I think. But, the data that Councilman Tisdale has put together is important, and I think, especially when it comes to police and fire, where we need to be. Biloxi and Ocean Springs, Chris is here, I think, and Chief is here. Ocean Springs and Gulfport and even Diablo have done some bumping that we didn't think, we did when we actually raised our patrolmen's salaries. It took them 2 years to catch up, but they caught up, and now that puts us in a situation where we've got to do everything we can to retain those, that force that is required. But I do, I'll do more of the arithmetic, because we have challenges in police and in water and sewer and streets and drainage that we need to take care of also, as well as everybody else. I mean, inflation's there. The dollars, as far as what it costs a gallon of gas, it's there too. If there's any possibility of sustainable increase, new revenue, again, we talked about the local and private. We tried to get on at the state level to provide a reasonable stream of revenue that would allow us to do these raises, or a raise. And it may take us 3 more months to work out the details, but we're 6 months into the FY year, And we're right about, our budget was record levels again in gaming, record levels again in sales tax, $15 million in sales tax. And we're just, we said 0.83% short at this point. So, if you were to press me right now, we need to look at it again in 6 or 7 weeks and see where we are.
Well, you said the 3% of the 1.8 million is like 600,000%. Or where'd you get that number from, the 1.8 million?
The 1.8 million, it's 3% across the board from the bottom, but I don't think doing 3% across the board is not going to impact us the way it needs to be impacted.
No, I'm just asking, so I mean, if we did 5%, it'd be like 3 million.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, so it's
Well,
but 600,000 times whatever percent you move it.
Yeah. Well, again, we don't have 600,000 in new revenue either.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that'd be 3 million a year.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the challenge. We want to make sure. Give you one example. I think we did year before last. This is gross gaming revenue across the board for us I-8 casinos. In March is what? March Madness, right? And you can see that level of gaming revenue drop over the last 3 years because of the proliferation in mobile gaming. So we dropped from about 105 to 94. That's in 1 month. So and we're hopeful that impact March Madness is where most sports betting is going. So we're hopeful that we stay right at the $1 billion gross gaming revenue mark because I think we forecast about $23 million in gaming revenue, which we're right at it. If we were to forecast and go to 2.4, even rolling the dice a little bit, but I'm not ready to roll those dice in that situation. Now we've got some, I think court funds are moving in the right direction, but I think that's not 600,000 or 700,000 that we can book, or even 1.2 million that we can book. So I don't have any magic bullets, but I thought that from the legislative situation, the local and private, where the occupancy tax would have generated probably $1.4 million based on the tourism numbers. So that's where we are, and our intent with the local and private, some of the things that we were asking, but because we support that population, 6,000 hotel rooms that require resources, and we want to do it the very best, very possibility that we could do. And then maybe some, I think Kenny had mentioned a little bit about sharing or coupling with tourism and some of those, that 5% generated about $12 million. Is that right? So we're just looking for 1.2, 1.3 of it. So that's what we thought with the 2% on would generate. But I'm not totally out of ideas, but the numbers are going to dictate what can be done.
A couple of questions. Do we have 624 employees? I know when we was doing budgets, that's what they totals we had. Do we still have 624, 625?
I think 606 employees. The rest are some part-time and salaries, commissions. About 600 employees, really, that we have.
I was just wondering, 'cause they always kept using 624 when we were doing the budget. So it's actually 600 or 606? Well,
the 624 have included the part-time lifeguards and stuff like that.
All right. So I was just trying to, but I mean, then that wouldn't be affected.
Well, you need to, yeah. Again, my concentration would be the entry level, getting it to, you had mentioned a number of times, getting it to at least a $15 compensation level. And we were rolling the dice also about the Pierce thing that got shot down this year. Yeah. But who knows what it's going to be next year? That could have cost us that extra, jumping that to 20% or 21% over the 17% that we match now. That's a big number. That's $2 million right there.
Yeah. But then on the public safety, the police and fire, we have probably, most of the time it's like 2/3 our employees is in those two groups. They're still about the same, 200 or so in the police and fire.
Yeah.
But that's still about the same number.
Yeah, of the whole budget, the personnel services out of the whole budget is like 61% of the whole ballgame, personnel services.
And I noticed you said that's where we're having a problem, that we had dropped down. Well, we'd already the number one as far as playing the police and the firemen. Here lately, we've seen fell back.
Well, he didn't fall back, they jumped
They fall
ahead. The other folks have jumped ahead because we were competitive, 2 years ago, Chief, wasn't that right? We were where we needed to be. Our goal was to match up with people like South Haven and Oxford. They don't have the challenges we have. They have, a lot of other revenue sources that we don't have. But, again, who's bigger than us as far as police? Is Jackson bigger than us? Jackson's bigger than us, and Gulfport.
Gulfport's bigger than us, and Gulfport right now is the standard that we looked at, figure out what it would cost
To jump.
to pay whatever Gulfport's paying.
Yeah. But that was, a significant, challenge, a jump. I thought I didn't expect that, to tell you the truth. But it is what it is.
But I think one thing, like you said, we definitely need to move the bottom to 15 because you can't seem to hire anybody.
Yeah, no,
They don't work anywhere.
That's right.
So we definitely need to get that up and see what it does. Like you said, the next 2 or 3 tiers or whatever.
Yeah.
That affects.
That we can, I can give you a plan in the next 2 weeks on that, on doing what we need to do to the entry level and those folks that are struggling, that, 50 cents an hour makes a big difference, or $1 an hour.
Because I know I've talked to Bill a couple times, said they work a week and quit, said I'm going somewhere else,
Yeah.
So there's just not enough money for them, but you need them.
Well,
You need those, you got to have that kind of person.
there are a number of things that complicate the issue when it comes to peers. And, the thing that adds 17 of 18% right off the top is, if there were a way, and I don't know, from a situation to say, even in overtime, that you do a second job within the city, and it doesn't, we can get bang for the buck, call it a contract labor situation that you're still an employee, but I don't have to fade that 17 or 18% from a peers situation. There's a lot of creative things that have not been looked at, but the retirement situation is from it's a dollar heavy from an employer part of the ballgame.
We definitely need to look at the 15, how much that affects us, and then you have to go to the 3%, 4%, 5%, which ain't hard to figure.
Yeah.
What it's going to take to do that, So anyway, next.
Yeah, the only thing is, and I kind of agree with you, looking at the entry-level positions, bringing that up to attract more people, because right now, we're having a hard time attracting people.
Yep.
So that
Retention's a bigger problem than attracting.
Yeah.
retaining them,
Retaining them, yeah.
Retention,
Yes.
if we attract them, they don't stay.
right? And I was going to take it to
Everybody
that
else
next
can't
step.
Well, we come to a situation that we don't want to be just struggling to retain, but we've got $5 million a year in non-departmental. Okay, so you weigh what's non-departmental versus employees. So if that's another source of expense, if we can cut expenses, we can increase the wages and salaries. But there's going to be some serious decisions to be made. Who can you cut? What can you cut in order to take care of our employees?
Right. And
So, I
see,
mean,
on that level,
Either new income or cut some of the other revenue
Yeah, and
to
on that-
offset the personnel services.
yeah, and that level of workers, like you said, the ones retaining them, we got to look at creative ways of maintaining them, and of course, income is the way. Our upper level, they're not going anywhere. We know they're not going anywhere, but we got to find a way to do that. And
Yeah.
most of them will go to McDonald's and make 15, 16 an hour, then they come here for 12.
No.
So we got to really, really look at that.
But I think nobody's making less than $13.65.
Yeah.
But you kicked it up $1.50. But literally, I mean, but the $1.50 turns into $2 and something when you add the 17% on top of that.
Yes.
Quick question on non-departmental, 3.3 million is insurance,
Well, yeah.
3.3 million.
Well, I mean, that's an expense too. I mean, we can be radical in each one of those.
Changing that.
If you squeeze 2 million out of the 5 total, you know,
Well, $1 million that goes to the library and the CTA. So that's $1 million.
I understand.
I'm just saying, so that's 4.3 million. So there's not a whole lot left to be cutting from. You take those, because you gotta do the insurance, even though we're trying to adjust some of that. But you got 4.3 million right off the bat that you pretty much stuck with. You know, so, anyway.
It's a rock and a hard spot.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got to move the rock. That's it, you know?
Talking about insurance, it used to be one of the perks of getting employed with the city is having such the best insurance, and now it seems like our insurance literally sucks. And also, especially with the police department, there's a lot of mental health issues, as you would imagine, and the insurance isn't even taking care of that and things like that. So I think we really need to look at that, especially with the budget time.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything to say or questions?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Tisdale?
May want to go to Mr. Glavin and Mr. Shoemaker first.
All right. Mr. Shoemaker, how about you?
Let me see. This on. Just a few questions, but Mayor, I know you said about 1.8 million is a 3% raise for all employees. So obviously we could do the math if it was up to 5 or 6%, but obviously I know we needed to work on police, fire for sure, and getting everything kind of level, and for entry for sure. Retention as well. I know y'all said the retention part of it, but the employees are the backbone of the city. Hands down, we couldn't do anything if it wasn't for the employees. So, and I know this is very preliminary, I guess, today, but whatever we can do, and I know y'all have a lot of numbers you have to look at, and everybody's got to crunch numbers the next couple of months, but, and I'll have, I'm sure, more questions moving forward, but I think definitely whatever we can do, the best we can do, especially with the economy the way it is. I mean, I get people complaining, probably everybody up here too, and y'all too, about money, you know, and we all know groceries, gas, everything's through the roof, and that's probably not going to change. So that's all, just whatever we can do for all employees. I mean, we have to obviously do more for others, but I think if we can do something for everybody, that's fantastic as well. That's it.
All
Thank
right, Mr. Glavin?
Yeah, I just have some brief comments, you know, and echo, I mean, all of us up here wants to be able to provide pay increases and fair compensation to all our employees. I think, you know, when we're just looking at salaries alone, I think we need to take the whole compensation package as we spread it against, you know, who we're competing against. That includes salaries, that includes the insurance cost, you know, that includes longevity, that includes, you know, all those other benefits that we provide our employees. And once you spread that across, I think we're committed to making sure that Biloxi's employees are paid in the upper tier when we compete with these other cities. You know, but you got to take the whole package and take a look at it. And, you know, you just can't take salaries alone, even though you got to analyze that. And you got to look at, you know, what is our employees paying for insurance, you know, and is that a fair share in the versus other cities, what they're paying. And then what does that net out? What is the true net compensation to our employees? And if we're falling short, we need to find a way to raise it up into the upper tier, upper echelon of competing municipalities. And I think that's the goal, you know, as we analyze all this to ensure that, because it could be a mix of all that. And I'm committed to doing that and spend however many hours we need to do to make that happen. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Tisdale.
Right, I've given everybody just a folder with a number of documents in it, and I'd like to review these just very quickly so you'll know what you're taking with you, and if you'll bring these folders back when we have a follow-up budget workshop, I have some more documents to share with you, but this will give you some information to think about.
Sorry.
Bless you, Madam President. If you look at sheet that's numbered 1, this is basically a history of the pay raises in the city of Biloxi since 2004. And you can see that I have the employees listed there at the top. In the middle section, for comparative purposes, I tried to find 3 factors that were, I guess, could be benchmarked to some degree, and one was the base hourly entry rate. You'll see in 2004, that was $7.38 an hour, and today it's, I think, $13, maybe $13.50, somewhere in there. What we paid a third-class police officer, left to right, over the years, and the same thing with a firefighter one. At the very top, highlighted in yellow, I asked the auditors from AVL when they were here, I said, what would you use, what's a good source for the rate of inflation? And they said, use the Social Security cost of living allowance. That's a pretty good indicator. So just over the years, you can see in between pay raises, you can see that I've added several years together to see what the increase was in inflation since the previous pay raise. But that's kind of eye-popping, and I think it's evident from roughly 2008 to 2015. There were no pay increases, and I think that cost us in the long run. But anyway, and then there at the bottom, you have the directors and the pay raises the directors got. So that's sheet one, if you will. So if you look to sheet two, sheet two, the top page, this is the city's vacancy report for May 10th, 2022, and the column in the middle of the page is the same type of report in February of 24. And you can see that basically what the numbers are. That's just vacancies. Okay? And then on page 3, this is a history coming from the annual audits. Again, from right to left this time. If you start on the far right, you can see in 2006 by department based on how it was broken out in the audits. And then there at the bottom right corner in 2006, you see that the city had, according to the audit that year, 579 employees. And then as you move to the left with each passing year, you kind of see where the employment numbers increase or decrease. Okay? That's just to give you some context. If you look at document number 3, and the mayor was kind enough to provide some figures here. He and I had a conversation, and I want to walk you through this. So the column on the left, that's basically the different positions by department, okay? And then you see the column EMP at the top, and it's in pink. That's the number of employees. For example, we have one CAO in administration. We have in the administration, in the CA office's staff, there are 4 employees. Okay, and the yellow column indicates how many vacancies there were. I think this was in roughly the middle of March, Mayor. I think that we had a brief conversation and you provided this data. And then in looking at the last column, that's what we budgeted in personnel for each of these departments or divisions within the department.
And that, Councilman, that number is not just salary.
No, that's, if you'll notice in the top left corner, it says general fund personnel, that's salaries and benefits. Okay, so there's a cost, as the mayor said, for all of these, and Mr. Glavin echoed. And then at the bottom of the second page, you'll see the total employees are 646, and at the time we had the conversation, there were 34 vacancies. Okay. All right, if you look at document 4, and there are 2 halves here. On the left half, on the left side of the page, you've got sworn compensation rates, and these figures were from Munis. And the note was all sworn officers are listed as 2,080. That's 2,080 hours to determine their hourly rate once you deduce that from their salary. So you see by rank in the last fiscal year. Basically, if you took the hourly rate and multiplied it by 2,080 hours for the rank of major, you see what the annual salary would be there. And then on the left half there with that vertical pink line, actual pay rates and normal scheduled hours. And then the administrative schedules, 8-hour shifts equal 2,080 hours a year. And then the Panama schedule. I need an expert to explain the Panama schedule. I think the chief will agree. But needless to say, there's a formula because of the hours that the police department work, and a different formula for what the fire department uses that takes into account what I would call budgeted overtime and then unbudgeted overtime. I think they may call it OT and OTS for OT straight here. And then in the police department for certain positions like investigators, CID, I think FTOs, field training officers, they get an incentive. I think it's 10% for each of those. So that's, if you're in the business, you know that. If you're not in the business working with this every day, you don't necessarily know that. And then what I did on the right side was I tried to figure out, you can't get an exact number, but what are we paying the typical the typical police employee at that rank based on the average hours they work and break it down to an average hourly rate. So if you look, for example, at patrolman third class on that right side of the page, the average hourly rate is $19.94 an hour. So based on these rough calculations, they're not perfect, but I think it would be fair to say that we don't pay our third-class police officers even $20 an hour. Is that accurate, Chief? Or okay, and so again, this is all for context, you know. Right, and it may be on whether they work all their time, all their overtime, the budgeted overtime, and then how much, in some instances, they want to work for additional overtime. So there's not the best I could do is averages to kind of figure all this out. So that's just, again, for police, this is something for you to think about. And then if you look at the next page, document number 5, here you see where we are in Biloxi compared with our neighbors, and I use South Haven. South Haven's up there in the northeast part of the state. It's right over the line, just south of Memphis. Is it Memphis, Tennessee? So you get a lot of police officers that come out of there to work in South Haven, and of course they got a lot of residential. I mean, they're blowing and going place up there, so their revenue based on property taxes is a chunk. But if you look at and these ranks are in ascending order. So if you come to work in Biloxi, you're going to start as a patrol officer third class at $40,859. And in Gulfport, you're going to start at $48,300. I want you to think about that for a moment. $48,300. I can't tell you how many third class patrol officers we have, Chief. I wouldn't expect you to know that. But shoot, that's a chunk. Right. All right, then you look at Ocean Springs, and this is what they're paying their entry level. Then with a 3% annual raise, and I don't know if that's each year. I can't recall if it's each year for 10 years or. I think it was an annual raise for a specific number of years. And then at D'Iberville, what they pay for entry, and in South Haven, because apparently they're swimming in money, that's before you're hired, before you go to the academy, they're going to pay you $60,000. I'm assuming the cost of living is probably a little higher in South Haven too. I may be wrong. Don't have anything to base that on. But you can see patrol officer second class as we go down the column on the left. Patrol officer first class. In some places we stack up pretty good. In other places we're falling short. all the way down the line there. So this basically compares us with our neighbors as best I can, looking at the different ranks and everything. So that's just food for thought. Now, if you'll turn your eyes, sheet number 6. I'm sorry, George, for the small print. But this is how you determine what the hoops you jump through to figure out an average hourly rate. And again, nobody really figures that but me, but I'm trying to understand how we pay folks. Again, you would need to sit down, I guess, with whoever is the budget specialist for the fire department to explain everything you see here, okay? But just let me walk you through just looking at the top of the page where you see FF1-1 to 1.5 years only. That's a firefighter 1. And then as you move to the right, firefighter 2, firefighter 3, then a captain and a battalion chief. You see what they're paid annually in each column. So a firefighter 1 is making $40,093 to begin with. And then they work, again, what I would call budgeted overtime. So in addition to the number of days I think hours they're working, they're going to work another few hours. And then the overtime straight is additional overtime, as I understand it. So what follows is an explanation of the shifts, the number of days in a shift, what a work period is, all these other things that, again, I'd have to sit down with a specialist in this area, which is what I did initially, but that was some months ago. But in looking in the middle of the page where you see 216 hours underlined, that's the 106 hours at base pay plus an additional 12 hours of overtime. So the total is, what, $1,803? Or is that the hours? That must be the hours. That's the hours worked in that pay period, work period. And work period. Exactly. So if you're a firefighter 1, 2, 3, or a captain, you're getting paid for the overtime that you work. Is that accurate, Nick? Captain down. And then if you're a battalion chief, then you're exempt. So it doesn't make any it doesn't make any difference how many hours they work, or does it at some point? Right. Exactly. And excuse me, I meant to mention that police officers work 12-hour days. They're not working 8 hours or 10 hours. They work 12-hour days. So then, if you get to that first darkened or shaded area, if firefighters are working all the time they're supposed to work, then, and you see in the pink the average pay per hour. So with all the hours they work, the best I was able to calculate is we're paying them $14.95 an hour. Maybe a little more if you're working a little more overtime or whatever. Something like that. But the other thing is, and it's not lost on me, I'm sure it's not lost on many others, is that there's sleep time involved there because they're working 24-hour shifts. So I don't know if they ever get a full 8-hour sleep with all the sirens and bells that are going off. But that's a significant difference from 12-hour days with no sleep and 24-hour shifts. And then there in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see what we paid in overtime in the fire department. I think this was this past year, 1.1 million. And I think I'd put that somewhere on the police sheet as well, a couple of pages back. This last document that I'll cover today is our pay comparison with our neighbors, Gulfport, Ocean Springs, and D'Iberville. And they may have some different names, different positions slightly. I'm sure the responsibilities differ, but in the left column, you see the position. In Biloxi, you have a firefighter 1, 2, and 3. And in Gulfport, looks like they have a firefighter 1, a firefighter 2. They don't have a firefighter 3, but they have an engineer. So you can see again how we stack up here with our neighbors, all the way down the line in salary. So again, this is to kind of give you some context. There are a couple of other general comments I'd like to make. First is that I would like to see us have another workshop perhaps in a couple of weeks. Again, I have more documents to hand out. I'll give them to you at that time because most of us would lose them between now and when we won't have them. But Ms. Newman made a good comment. She said, just we need to do something with our insurance. Well, Mr. Glavin and Mr. Lawrence and I are on the insurance committee. We've met with SI several times. And what we're doing right now is taking our current health insurance policy, and SI is going to be shopping that, or is shopping that as we speak, to see what other companies might offer us the same coverage. And we've asked him to include Blue Cross Blue Shield, although when you look at Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're going to tell you, here's our plan, take it or leave it. So it may not match up with the plan we have now, but still, with the group of employees that we met with several times last year, and in a survey I'd done previously for a couple of years, what bubbled up was, I'd rather pay more for Blue Cross Blue Shield based on what we have now. And I suspect you've heard some of that as well. So what we're trying to do is, get to keep the medical coverage that we have, maybe even improve it a little bit, but also look at shopping it so that we can reduce our costs wherever possible. And if it's possible, if we can reduce the cost and increase some coverage in some areas that help most of our employees, then that would be terrific. But I think our goal is to, within the next month or two, to have a cost figure associated with employee insurance that's ready to plug into the budget. That's our goal. The second thing is with employee pay, and I think that's the next piece that we need to be able to plug into our budget. So my hope would be that with another workshop or 2 or 3 and some time in between to study what we can do and what we can't do. The word creative was mentioned several times. And we either reduce, to pay employees more, we got to reduce the cost of some of the expenses that we have to bear in services, or we have to count on an improved economy that generates more revenue, or a combination of the two. But again, my hope would be that we can hammer out the employee pay and health insurance before we really get into these budget workshops, which we usually have in August, so that we can dedicate those costs right there to the budget. And what that would mean is, how much money's left for all these other costs and services that we have to provide, and how are we going to prioritize those? I'm on a roll, Mayor, hang on. I'll give you some time. Yeah, take another breath. The other thing is that Mr. Lawrence's point of $15 an hour is a floor. It comes with some challenges, because depending on how these pay bands, now that we have them, which personally I'd like to see us get away from, that's a different conversation for a different time. But if you're going to raise the floor by $2 an hour, then that's going to raise everybody's floor, or the pay minimum for each band, which may or may not be a good thing, but if it's going up, we still have to find the funding for that. What I would prefer to see is that we look perhaps department by department. I mean, we have a real need, I think we'll all agree, for more law enforcement officers. How are you going to get them in the door? How are you going to attract them to Biloxi and hang on to them, first of all? in some positions in the police department, we really need to come up with more revenue for those positions. In other positions, we look okay. Same thing with the fire department. I think in order to get folks in for some of the other departments, particularly the entry levels, $15 sounds really great. I'd love to see us go to 15. What we don't have access to on this side of the desk, Mayor, is we don't have access to the facts and figures that you have on your end. So we're like the architects and you're like the builders. We think this is going to be beautiful, and you've got to do all the dirty work and the heavy lifting to get it done. So my thinking at this point is, if nothing else, that I've shared some information that may be thought-provoking to you and with the administration. It would be great if we could start attaching some numbers to what's possible, so that with the next workshop we can kind of see what's doable and what may not be doable. But from what I gathered, don't look for any pay increase between now and the beginning of next fiscal year. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, but you bring up some very, very valid, good points in comparisons. One of the challenges, and this is raw dollars, this is compensation. And, and our parts of our compensation, longevity, a couple of these other things, education, that's all wrapped in. Dollars are dollars. And the challenge you're going to have is to compare the fringes that come with Biloxi and dollarize that. People don't look at that. They just don't seem to pay attention when it comes to, well, I can go to another city, I'm making $2,000 more. And they don't pay attention. It's going to cost you $1,400 instead of, what we're doing here. So that's all part of the comparison we need to do. But it's a challenge to talk about benefits to new recruits, right? Pretty much. So, I mean, you got to have the raw dollar situation and get creative on what the rest of the package is. But, it's good that, the comparisons, that's exactly what we compare, South Haven and Oxford, right? As far as what's happening. But there is a whole package that we need to wrap together and dollarize. Some of these, people think they're bulletproof. I don't need insurance. It'd be a way I don't have that answer. And the PERS, the 17, 18% that we choke down is a big part of everything too. But no, the points are good. The numbers are pretty much accurate. Now we just got to face the challenge of how we get competitive, how we stay competitive, and how we have a growth path for the people that we want 20-year employees. Because now we got a bunch of retirements coming up, and they can retire, and if they see some better ways to do the things that are good for their family, they're going to take it. Nobody can fault that. But the employees make us who we are, what we are, and we just got to take every look at every nook and cranny, whether it's increasing revenue or reducing expenses. The insurance is a big part in it, but it's hard to dollarize that when you try to stay competitive with the rest of the state. And even Alabama and Louisiana. I'm surprised we don't get, more interest from Louisiana at this point in time. And we need to look at some of what, they've been doing as far as wrapping the package. But we got to stay competitive, in every phase.
Just have one more question. What's a mill raise?
$7.55.
Thank you.
Now, we can have a more solid number in July. It's going to the state tax commission, as far as assessed value. I think we'll raise, I think it's $7.55.
Mayor, you mentioned something about, in about 2 or 3 weeks that you would probably be able to get a good tab on it.
Yeah.
On that. So I was thinking, because right now, Dr. Tisdale gave us some great numbers, and it'll give us time to review them. And then a month from today, I guess the 14th would be it, having a good special meeting about that. And I noticed Dr. Tisdale mentioned something about going back to Blue Cross Blue Shield. You kind of touched on that. I've always been a big fan. Probably I'm the only one that voted against this insurance we have now. So that's something we can also start addressing going into the next budget year. Thank you.
Yeah, on Blue Cross Blue Shield, I think we're analyzing that, the problem with Blue Cross Blue Shield, their pharmaceuticals went through the roof. And they would never give us concrete numbers to be able to say, is there an alternative to these prescriptions that they were doing? That's the problem. Had we stayed with Blue Cross Blue Shield, we feel that our insurance cost would have been much greater because of that. But we're willing to go back to the table and see if they want to come back to us and give us a better proposal. That's where we are.
We left the old policy because they got too expensive.
Right, I mean, that's the whole thing, it's cost-driven, and the costs are going up, and we're just trying to control those costs.
And
So-
along with looking at the care of our people too.
Right, Mr. Gaines mentioned May 21st, which is roughly a month from now, that'd be the
May 14th, I think it's the 14th, would be a month.
second Tuesday, we don't have a council meeting.
Oh, no, third Tuesday. Is it the 14th?
Third Tuesday would be the 21st.
Gotcha.
It's all right, I'm looking out for you.
I'm a week off.
All right.
I'm doing it out of this great, wonderful brain I got.
So, does May 21st following the council meeting look good to everybody?
Yes.
And if anybody has a question about the handouts, like I say, it's just really kind of an educational, give you some background, give you something to look at and consider. Other than that, I guess that's all we have. Is there anything else for the good of the order? There's a motion by Mr. Gaines, a second by Mr. Lawrence. All in favor? All opposed? Good. We're adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mike.